Minister of Aviation, Hadi Sirika, says plans are already underway to concession the country's major airports for a period of 25 years.
Mr. Sirika disclosed this when he appeared before a joint committee of the Senate at a public hearing on the 2020-2021 medium-term expenditure framework and fiscal strategy paper. While responding to questions from lawmakers on the creation of new sources of generating revenue, the minister said opting for concession is a better option to outright sale so as to retain Nigeria's critical assets.
The chairman, Air Transport Services Senior Staff Association, FAN branch, Danjuma Ahmed, is here with us in the studio to bring insight and light into understanding this whole thing. Nice to have you join us.
Good morning.
Right now, Danjuma. I remember we have had this discussion before on the program sometime where you said it wasn't clear what the plan was regarding the issues of concession and that there are different parts of the airport or the aviation sector that can be concessioned and all of that. But is it clear to you and the union now as to what the federal government's plans are?
Yes. I think the last 1 or 2 months, the Honorable Minister got certificate of compliance from ICRC, which is the first stage in the process of concession. And in that document, the scope of the concession was determined, where they claim that it's the terminal concession this time around. But like what we've been saying over time, transparency, transparency, transparency. Most of the stakeholders are clamoring for transparency. And getting the OBC itself, that's the online business case itself, was faulty. The scope of the concession was determined, where they claim that it's the terminal concession this time around. But like what we've been saying over time, transparency, transparency, transparency. Most of the stakeholders are clamoring for transparency. And getting the OBC itself, that's the online business case itself, was faulty. The process was faulty. The last meeting of the project delivery team, which I was a member, we have not arrived at the scope because that was the question we posed to the transaction advisor. That what part of the airport do you think you want to advise government to concession? There was no answer at that forum. And the idea was he was to go back, consult, and get back to the committee, then we arrive at the scope. And the reason why we asked that question was for us to have an input on the scope. If you are to advise government, okay, concession the apron, the ramp, or concession the terminal building, or concession the car parks, or concession the whole airports, including the runway. At that point, we as Labour will have a responsibility to advise the transaction advisor. See, we don't think this is where you should advise government. We will tell you the challenges concerned if you are to advise government to concession the apron. We will tell you the challenges if you are to concession the terminal building.
But if you reserve the right to advise government, and government is the original owner of this, at least by law, is the custodian or trustee of the entire, does the government reserve the right to go ahead and listen or not listen to advice and go ahead with the concession?
One of us always claim that the federal government is a social democrat. They are social democrats. That means they listen to everybody. No matter how minority your idea is, we are Nigerians, we are critical stakeholders, we should be listened to. And we believe whatever advice we are going to give government is not for our self-interest, it's for national interest. We have been saying that.
So with the manner in which things are going, do you think, because one of the issues is the fact that government is talking about generating funds and not having enough to, handle this, the airports the way it should. So are you saying this decision is not in national interest?
Well, it depends on the way you look at it. It could be a national interest because it's a national policy. That is the roadmap that the Honourable Minister presented from the beginning. And we've not objected to some of the roadmaps that he presented, like the National Carrier, MRO, Aircraft Leasing Company, Aerotropolis, and the rest. We have no problem with that. But there are issues as far as concession of our airports is concerned. Let me tell you, the international terminals of Abuja, Port Harcourt, Lagos, and Kano were procured by a loan from Chinese government of $500 million. As of today, that loan has risen to nearly $1 billion. And nobody has said how is that money going to be paid. In one of the agreements agreed between the government of Nigeria and the Chinese was that upon completion of that terminus, whatever revenue generated will be used to service the loan and maintain the terminus. There are written agreements. I tell you, Abuja Air Force has been commissioned for almost a year now. All these agreements were jettisoned. Which interested or curious investor will come and enter into that kind of problem?
So that's the danger you see?
That is the danger we are saying. Resolve these issues on ground. You have got money from somewhere, and you now want to hand over to a concessionaire, maybe without him knowing exactly what are the components of that agreement. About 3 weeks ago, the Honorable Minister of Finance and the Controller General Office invited FAN to come and look at this agreement. We have never one day serviced this debt. And the OBC does not say anything about how to manage that concession. So, like I said, any right-thinking businessman will look at your plan. What do you have on ground? I can't put my money where I'm going to have problem.
All right. In your capacity, when it comes to your union and other unions within the aviation, how do you all plan to assist government or otherwise concerning the issues of the concession?
Well, we have made ourselves available. By being members of the project deliberative is clear indication that we are ready to partner with government to do the right thing.
All right.
But what I'm saying is that most of the time, most of these advice, like we position 3 options. We say cooperatize. Instead of concession, we'll go to the capital market, raise our money, and do our infrastructure. Why are they not taking that? We say, okay, do greenfield concession. We don't leave this a brownfield they want to do. We have already developed these airports. We are not satisfied with what it is today because there are serious interference from the government. I tell you, FAN has the capacity to turn around the fortunes of our airports if we are allowed to do that. But since they don't allow us to do that, if you want to do concession, okay, let us do the right thing.
All right.
That's what we are saying.
All right.
Now let's get the perspective of FAN to this issue now. Now the government is saying there is no going back. How far is FAN willing to go to prove its stance at this point? What options are on the table for the union?
Yeah, for the unions, we have a lot of options. But our strategies are always kept in the hidden. We don't say this is what you will do because circumstances might come up that might likely change whatever strategy you have. But ours is just a responsibility to still enlighten and make government understand our position. At the end of the day, it's their property. They have the right to do whatever they want to do with their property. But they have also a responsibility to listen to our own demands. Over time, I've been very careful not to bring the issue of labor so that I will not be seen to be sentimental or biased. But I have to say this now. FAN has a lot and huge responsibility. And we have over 8,000 workers in FAN, about 4,500 pensioners. Our major concern was when they are developing the outline business case, what happened to these people? The outline business case says the concessionaire, the new concessionaire will take over the staff that are working in these 4 airports. In Lagos alone, we have over 3,000 workers. And that after 2 years, they have the right and option to either continue working with them or return them back to FAN. That is what the outline business case said. But we have a challenge in FAN now. We have huge pension liabilities. And that's why we have been clamoring. Let us resolve these issues first. Because as it stands today, we had an actuarial valuation conducted in 2012, 84.8 billion naira of net worth of the staff have not been remitted to our PFS. 2016, another actuarial valuation was conducted, about 104 billion naira, not remitted to the PFS. FAN still retire their staff on the defined benefit scheme.
But have you engaged government on all of
We
these
have done
developments?
that. And as I have been very careful not to say this because I don't want people to believe it's because of this, that's why we're agitating. There are more important issues aside from labor issues.
Yeah, but the concern you have, isn't this concern because of your workers, what they might or what their fate could become
ultimately,
in the
ultimately
new dawn?
that is it. Ultimately, that is it. And what we are saying is that if we cannot be able to address these financial difficulties Are you transferring this liability to the concessionaire? The answer is no. No any right thinking concessionaire would take a burden of over 100 billion naira. And you are now saying if the concessionaire would like or he doesn't like to work with you after 2 years, he will return you back to FAN. And back to FAN, where are you going to work? The 4 airports you have been working has been concession. The guy said he doesn't want you. So if you come back to where are you going to work? And we have 18 other airports to manage. The ratio of sharing formula for the revenues is 60-40, according to the OBC. 60 to FAN, 40 to the concessionaire. As we are 100% now, we are having challenges. What more of when we have 60%?
So in this case, as government is saying there's no going back, are we seeing an industrial action going forward from
Ultimately, if we cannot be listened to, definitely we have an option. And our options are vast. We have different ways of handling issues. But we explore the most considerable and diligent way of handling issues. We may not like to go to the extreme, but if we are pushed to, we have no choice.
All right. We have to leave it here now. Thank you so much, Danjuma Ahmed, for your time on the program.
Thank you very much.